जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन, यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन। यमुना तीर वनचारी, यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय राधा श्याम सुंदर, राधा श्याम सुंदर राधे। जय कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम। जय कृष्ण बलराम। जय गौरानिताय गौरानिताय। जय गौरानिताय। जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद। जय श्रील प्रभुपाद। हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च। श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितां तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। So, can we do a quick recap of what we did last week? Anyone remembers which all verses we did last week? No? क्या हुआ? I
No.
say this question के ऊपर everybody keeps silence.
It's like the teacher asking about the revision. So,
Okay, whatever you remember, tell me, no problem.
Garimaji, maybe you would want to uh, talk about
No,
it.
my memory is very bad. I never remember what we did last time. The only time I remember what we did last time was when I actually missed the classes. And that day morning itself, I listened to the YouTube video. So I remembered what we did last time. But today, definitely, yeah. If we come up with a topic, then I'll be able to explain on my understanding, but not the other way around. Sorry.
Okay, do you remember the topic that we talked about? Forget exact details. Topic, what was the topic?
No, in fact, the other way around, I'll be able to say.
Okay. How many verses did we do? Which all verses? Do you remember the numbers? No?
We were supposed to do 21 to 25, but we did only 21 and 22 because after that, a lot of questions came up
Huh.
and we were talking about those. This
Okay.
is, yeah.
Okay. So what is okay? Krishna has spoken about that the soul is indestructible in one of the previous verses also, right? And these are like eternal, unborn, immutable. These are a few additional characteristics that he talks about, right? Then he talks about one example, a metaphor that he gives. What is this metaphor and what is the significance of this metaphor? No?
I think the significance is that we are putting too much value on our physical selves,
Hmm.
and actually, it is the soul that transits between different physical, appearance or
Wearing,
being.
wearing of the old clothes, like so, the body, the soul sheds the body like in old clothes. That's the metaphor being used.
Yeah, correct. So the key point to be taken back from this verse is that the way we don't lament, we don't have any sadness when we give up our clothes. Every day we give up the old clothes and wear new clothes. Again, next day we wear another new clothes. So we don't have any attachment to those clothes. And over a period of time, when the old clothes become worn out, then we discard them completely. At that time we don't cry and we don't hit our head on a wall saying that, oh, I lost my clothes permanently. No, we don't do that, right? So why do we not do it? Because we are not attached to those clothes. We consider that to be something external to us, which is something we have already accepted, that clothes, and for that matter, clothes, job, car, bank balance, and so many other things, we know they will be with us for a temporary amount of time. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Even a house also, sometimes when it gets old, 20, 30, 40 years later, we demolish that building or a villa or whatever it is, and we construct a new one. And when that is getting demolished, we don't feel that we have lost something because we know something new is coming up. So Krishna, via this metaphor, is teaching us that your body is also not anything different than all these material, uh, objects. So clothes you discard, you similarly you discard body also. So when you do not have such kind of attachment towards your clothes, you should not have towards your body also. It is only because we cannot see what has happened prior to us getting this body, and we will not know what will happen to us after this body is given up. If we knew the journey, like a train, uh, many of you are like have traveled in train. So let's say a train starts from Mumbai and supposed to go to Delhi. So the first stop from Mumbai comes, Baroda. Let's say it's a Rajdhani Express. Then Baroda, Ratlam, Kota, sort of, let's say five stations are there. When Baroda or Mumbai is left behind, it's like, one body has been left behind and we reach to a new body called as Baroda. When Baroda is left behind and we reach to another body called Ratlam, we do not cry that because Baroda has been left behind. Similarly, because we know the complete journey from Mumbai to Delhi, we can very well say what happened in Mumbai, what happened in Baroda, what happened in Ratlam, Kota, and New Delhi. But because we do not know what has happened with us in our previous life and what will happen with us in the next life, we consider this life as the only life. And then whatever events happen in this life, we consider them to be all in all. There is nothing before, nothing after. And that's why, because we have no understanding about the events beyond this life, before or after, we lament about this loss of this body. which is what Krishna is saying, that you give up bodies like you gave up dress, and you should not lament about it. Now, what happens is we consider giving up of a body as a very negative activity, but we do not understand that there is far more positive aspect to this metaphor than the negative one. We consider death as termination, whereas death is a transition. The soul moves from one body to another. So it's a transition. So when at this point of time, when we are sufficiently young, we would not want us to lose the body, or even 20 years later also. But ask somebody that, okay, you are 80 years old now, you have so many diseases in your body, you can't even walk properly, can't chew the food properly, can't hear, can't see properly. If somebody says that because of XYZ reasons, you are going to get a new body in your next life, and that body will be like, you will be as handsome like say Milin Soman or John Abraham, and you will be as rich as Bill Gates, and you will be as intelligent as Vishwanathan Anand or Gary Kasparov, sort of, yeah, just for the sake of discussion. So would you like such a body? So obviously that person will say yes. And in this case, he will be happy to give up the body and take up a new one. Of course, some attachment will be there. It won't be so simple. But I'm just giving an example. Because we do not understand about the next life, we always are worried about it. So we have to look about with this to this body and to even death also positively. And a complete chapter, chapter number 8, Krishna has spoken about the time of death and the thoughts that are there in the person's mind, what kind of thoughts should be there in the person's mind, and how to embrace death. Meaning we consider this to be a negative topic, but for us, we need to understand that we are a soul, we are not the body. We are trapped here. Let's say you are in a single room trapped. Okay, absolutely, there is nobody to open the lock. Okay, there is no key, there is no exit route. For 20 years you have been trapped. What would your first priority be in this case? To come out of that room in some or the other manner. That is the way the soul is trapped in the body now. It cannot come out of the body. But the soul is not part of this material world. And we gave that example, right, of a fish. A fish in a water, if you take out, let's say, a big shark, you take out a shark and bring him onto the streets. And then you say, okay, fine, I'm creating Burj Khalifa for you, and you will get all the 100 floors for yourself, and I will give you 25 kgs sona ornaments, and $5 billion to you, and there will be 25,000 princes and various people serving you day and night. Y- for a few days that fish may like it. Just assume for the sake of discussion. But finally, what will happen? The fish will get bored because its nature is to be within water. It might be a very small fish, but it would still prefer to stay in a water rather than behaving like a king on earth. Yeah, he might get all the money, all the palaces, all the women, all the men, all the material opulences on earth. But despite that, the fish will not be happy because its nature is to be within water. So the soul's nature is also to go back into the spiritual world because that is where it belongs. Now, if the soul is trapped in the material body, for the soul to come out of the material body, and that too on a permanent basis, is the most happiest thing, which we don't understand now at this point of time because our spiritual knowledge, the level of our spiritual knowledge is at a beginner level. But when we rise up in our spiritual knowledge, then we will understand that this material body is only there for us to suffer for whatever actions we did previously. But whereas actually we should be utilizing it for the purpose of doing bhakti towards Krishna. Hare Krishna. Any question so far, whatever we have done? Is it hard
No,
hitting?
no.
Is it hard hitting? Is it difficult to accept? I know it is difficult. It will take some time. But is it convincing or no?
I think it is convincing, but for us to accept it,
Hmm.
I think to absorb this whole thing takes
Yeah,
a
it will
lot
take.
more understanding
Correct.
specifically. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. Fine. So shall we proceed with the next verse? We'll try and do three verses today, 23, 24, 25, which will be a logical break.
Sure.
Deepak Prabhuji, welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sorry, Prabhuji. I
No
joined late.
worries. No problem. So let's chant verse number 23. This is one of the famous verses in Bhagavad Gita. Many people know this. Nainam chindanti shastrani.
Nainam
Nainam
chindanti
chindanti
shastrani.
sastrani.
Nainam dahati pavakaha.
Nainam
Nainam
dahati
dahati
pavakaha.
pavakaha.
न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो
Na chainam
Chainam
kledayantyapo.
klidayam.
न शोषयति मारुतः
Na
Na
sosyati
soshayati
marutaha.
martaha.
नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः. Can someone read the translation?
The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind.
Okay. So this is like meaning in many TV serials and movies and famous personalities, they talk about this verse. So that's why it has become kind of known to the common public. It basically says that four qualities of the material world, okay, or the elements of the material matter can not impact the soul in any way. So we know how many material elements do we know? Earth, water,
Five Prabhu.
five totally correct.
Fire,
Earth, water,
earth,
fire,
Water.
wind,
and air,
Yeah.
right? And the fifth one is ether, meaning sky, okay? But that is a subtle element, okay? Let's first understand what is subtle and what is gross. What do you think? What is subtle? What does subtle mean? And what does gross mean?
maybe gross means that you can actually see it.
Correct. So so is air gross or not gross? Because you cannot
Not,
see air.
yeah, because you can't see it.
So is air
You,
gross or no?
I think it is subtle.
Okay. So when we say gross, it means it has certain physical dimensions, right? Because you can see earth, you can see fire, you can feel fire, you can taste earth, you can taste water. Yeah. You can, meaning there are five senses, right, that we have. A ear, which can hear, so sound is there. Sound is from ether. Okay. Then comes, so sound is the subtlest of all the five material elements. Subtlest, but not completely subtle. Okay. The least gross, I could put it that way. Okay. Because out of the five senses, only one sense can, um, perceive sound or perceive ether. Okay. So a little gross than what do you say? Than ether is fire. So fire you can feel it and you can hear it. There is sound coming from fire also, right? You can feel and you can hear. Sorry, sorry. I'll correct myself. I'm sorry. Air. Sorry. Uh, Air is uh, a little gross compared to this one, than the sky. So you can hear air and you can feel air. You cannot taste air. You cannot eat air or taste and what can you can touch. You can and you cannot see. Today I'm forgetting these words. Okay. So so sky has you can basically hear the sound that comes from it. Air meaning you can hear and you can feel. Then comes uh, fire. Right? So fire can be heard, you can hear the sound, then you can feel and you can see also. So one sense got added, seeing. Then comes water. So you can hear water, you can feel water, you can see water, and you can taste water. So fourth sense got added. And earth has a fifth element, which is um, what is it? Form. Yeah. So you can I'm losing this chain. Smell. So you can smell earth. You cannot smell water. You cannot smell fire. You cannot smell air. So earth has all the five material senses involved in it. Water has only four. Fire has three. Air has two, and ether has one. Okay. So when the creation happens, yeah, this is nicely explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. When the creation happens, it happens via this order: ether, air, fire, water, earth. This is the way the creation order of creation is there. And when the destruction happens, the first earth is destroyed, then water is destroyed, then fire is destroyed, then air, and then ether. That is how the destruction happens. Why are we talking about it? Okay. So all of these come under the scope of matter, because matter is inferior to spirit and soul is part of the spiritual world. It indicates that spiritual anything which is spiritual cannot be impacted by anything which is material. So which means the soul cannot be destroyed or harmed or in any manner impacted by anything which is matter. And all of these, okay, now let's look at this. A weapon. Weapon is indicating some kind of earth related component. Yeah? Generally, you make weapons from, even if it is a gun, it is a metal or something like that, yeah, which comes from earth. Fire, water, and wind. So four material elements are being talked about here to indicate that they cannot in any way harm the soul, to indicate that soul is something different than whatever you have perceived so far from matter perspective. Okay, now so you can see, like we talked about this point, right? There is a kind of a negative tone to some of the verses, especially in this second chapter, and we talked about it last time. It is specifically there to um, remove the conception that has already been built into us and based on which we try to understand every new concept. So when we are learning about something which is completely different from whatever we have heard, seen, and felt so far, we will actually make a mistake, because none of the knowledge that we have gathered so far will be able to teach us that new concept which is completely different than whatever we have studied so far. So that's why first it is important to unlearn it. And that unlearning phase is also meaning supported by telling us what it is not, whatever we are trying to learn newly, what it is not. And whatever it is not, after removing all the thoughts that come to our mind, that it is not this, it is not that, it is not this, it is not that, then we become a little open to accepting what it is. So it becomes simple to learn. That's why this style is there. Now, why this is important for Arjun? Any guesses? Why should Arjun know about this one?
Because he's in that guilt out of those questions that he has asked
Hmm,
to our to Krishna. So one of the questions is that dynasty kaise chalega? How can I do the
hmm,
paap mere par aa jayega like that? So
correct,
if he's in the knowledge that the soul is never going to die, it's just the material, the physical matter of it. So he'll come out of that, the question of how can I kill my, that kind of a question. And for that, he needs to know how the soul is indestructible, which cannot be destroyed by any of the physical elements that is described in this verse. So
correct,
basically,
correct. But if you look at it, the previous verse did mention that, right? That the soul is indestructible. So soul being indestructible has already been mentioned by Krishna. Indestructible, eternal, unborn, immutable, and all that. But immutable, despite immutable meaning changeless, you cannot cause any change in the state of that component. So despite that, he is mentioning here, and the reason for that is like Arjun is a Kshatriya. Okay, he has access to many powerful weapons. Some of these weapons are gaseous. So there is one weapon that Arjun had which could make people laugh. Huh? It was oriented via some gas. It could inject a gas in the body, or so have it in the environment, which will make people laugh. So continuous laughing can cause destruction of the body also. He had fire related weapons. He had weapons which could cause rain also. Yeah. So such kind of plethora of weapons was there. He had a huge sword as well. He was expert in archery. He was expert in gada yuddha also, mace fighting. Uh, so Krishna is telling him that not even a single weapon, not even any of your weapon can do any harm to a soul. The purposely the size of the soul was described. It is 1/10,000th tip of a hair. So if you take the tip of a hair and divide it in 10,000 parts, that one part can be approximately called as the size of the soul. That small chintu, tiny soul cannot be destroyed by even the biggest and the best of all of your weapons. Fire weapon, wind weapon, water weapon, any kind of weapon. So Prabhupada writes here in this purport, this one. किधर गया? All kinds of weapons, swords, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornadoes are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, fire, etc. In addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons. But formerly there were other weapons made of all different types of material elements. Fire elements were counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. So what Krishna is trying to tell him here is, you are thinking you are going to kill, but you cannot kill the soul. Despite of your huge plethora of weapons that you have, you cannot do any harm to any soul. This is one of the messages that Krishna is giving him. Any question around this? No? Shanti हो गई? क्या हुआ?
No, no questions. You explained it very well.
Okay, fine. We'll move on to the next verse. Achedyoyam adahyoyam
Achedyo yam adyayo yam.
akledyo shosya evacha
Akledyo
Akledyo
ashosh evacha
evacha
nityah sarvagatah sthanur
nityah
sarva gatah
sarvagatastano
achaloyam sanatanah.
achaloyam sanatah.
Okay, so just few points we need to understand. Can you see this some kind of small English S kind of alphabet is there between the word achedyo and yama? Are you meaning this is there only in the Devanagari script, the Sanskrit language? Are you able to see this?
Yeah, bro.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
yes.
So whenever this alphabet is there, the way the shlok is pronounced is either there are two methods. Either you elongate the previous alphabet or you chant the word a before the next alphabet. So I can say achedyoyam. So the word alphabet dyo is elongated. Achedyoyam. Or I can say achedyo, break it in two words basically. Achedyo is one word and ayam is another word. So achedyo ayam or achedyoyam. In both ways it can be chanted. Okay. And another point to be noted is you can see this colon, right? In English also we have this colon. Right? So whenever this colon comes, there is it is called as visarga. So whenever this comes, you need to, depending on where that colon is coming, you need to chant it in two different manners. So all these verses in whole of Bhagavad Gita, they are of two types. Either it is a 16 syllable line, or it could be a 24 syllable line. Do you know what a syllable is? From Sanskrit perspective. So in English, we will call this as alphabet. ACCHEDYO, individual alphabets. But in Sanskrit, when you are speaking, you will say a, che, yo, three syllables. It doesn't matter how many alphabets in English are there. What matters is when one single pronunciation, whatever you speak becomes one syllable. Okay, so a, che, dyo, ya, ma, da, yo, ya, ma, kle, dyo, sho, sha, e, va, cha. So these all become totally 16 syllables. So when you speak a verse, you can break that in 8 plus 8 and then next line as 8 plus 8. So if this colon is coming at the end of the 8th or the 16th alphabet or syllable, then you use the alphabet or syllable ha to end that, to pronounce that visarga. But if it comes in between, meaning either from the first to the seventh syllable, then you speak in a bit different manner, and I'll show you how. So nitya, and then the colon is there. So if since it is come not at the end of the 8th or 16th syllable, I will say nitya, nitya. The h is kind of half pronounced. But in the word sanatana, okay, it has come at the end of 16th syllable. So I will chant it as sanatanah. Okay, it basically extends the matra of the previous alphabet. Had this means, let's say, Sanatani, had it been, okay, so I would say as Sanatani hi, or say it would be Sanatano, then I would say as Sanatano ho. That is how you pronounce it. And in English, this is denoted by a apostrophe before yam. Ayam, the is not there in English also in these verses. It is there as a apostrophe, which indicates that is to be spoken, chanted, depending on whether you chant that line completely or you chant the line word by word. If you are chanting it word by word, should be pronounced. If you are chanting it completely, then you can elongate the previous alphabet and do not chant the word a. These are just technical things. The perfect pronunciation in Sanskrit is not why we are studying Bhagavad Gita, but it's always nice to learn this. Of course, learning Sanskrit cannot be at the expense of understanding and applying Bhagavad Gita in our life. It can be as an added advantage. Yeah. Can someone read the translation, please?
Yes, Prabhu. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Shri Prabhupada.
This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Right.
So now what has happened? Previously, he has already spoken that, wind cannot do this and fire cannot burn it and all that, but still he is repeating this one. Now the point is, Arjun shouldn't think that fine, maybe there are weapons and I am a great warrior. I have weapons which can do this. Yeah. Or somebody like us shouldn't think, Arey yaar, those people were like, old fashioned. What do they know about weapons? I have a nuclear weapon, or I have, AK-47, or I have this and that and whatever, laser guns or whatever it is. They can, point to a amoeba also and kill it. So to remove such kind of thoughts coming from anybody, he is saying at a principle level, it is not possible to be done. Unbreakable meaning you cannot damage that by throwing it on earth or on the surface, nor can you throw some paperweight on a soul and break that soul or something like that. You cannot dilute that within sulfuric acid also, let alone water. Sulfuric acid or whatever the deadliest of the acids or whatever chemicals we can think of, it is insoluble. Come what may, you cannot do any harm to the soul. You cannot dissolve the soul. You cannot burn it. Somebody may say, "Arey yaar, normal fire weapons would be probably 500 600 degrees Celsius ke rahenge. What if I subject the heat of a furnace, which can be even 20,000 degrees Celsius also, which smelters, ore and iron and so many things out of metals as well. It can even, liquidify metals also. Soul kya cheez hai? So he's putting a stop to such thought process. You cannot do that, nor can you dry it also. Come what may, whatever air weapon you want to use, nahi kar sakte aap. He is everlasting. You cannot say कि यार there will be a time treats everything, there is an end to everything. नहीं, soul का कुछ end नहीं होता है, everlasting है, सर्वगतः, present everywhere. To say that soul can only exist on earth is to say that meaning the circumstances on other planets are such that the soul cannot sustain that circumstance, which also means that soul cannot tolerate heat of the sun. It cannot tolerate the cold of other planets, which means there is some change, some impact that the heat or the cold can do to the soul. Whereas Krishna is saying that absolutely not a single material element can do any damage, any impact to the soul. So it can exist everywhere. So somebody was challenging us कि सन के ऊपर कैसे हो सकते हैं करके. तो अभी सन का ऊपर कितना टेम्परेचर है, we might have probably just an idea about it. But even if we say that 100 degrees पे भी सोल नहीं रह सकता है, कैसे रह सकता है कोई? So we should know that there are temperatures uh, at around 20,000, 30,000 feet below the sea meaning at the depth of the sea. There are fishes which stay only in that depth, because if they come up, the temperature increases and they die. And the temperature at 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 feet is minus 20, minus 30, minus 40 degrees Celsius below the meaning at that depth. Similarly, far above is also very high temperature. So there are germs which do sustain. There is a technical term, scientific term as well to such bacteria. I forgot that term, but there is a term for that. They can sustain only high temperatures like 300, 400 degrees Celsius के temperatures. So it is possible and it is happening today. It's just that we don't know about it. That's why we raise these questions. ये कैसे हो सकता है? हो सकता है. Just because certain things are not known to us doesn't mean it cannot happen. Unchangeable, immovable, and eternal. Okay, so which we have learned already. So this verse just confirms the superiority of spirit over matter. Okay. Spoke about. Okay. So now, with due respect to everybody, I don't want to belittle anybody, but there is a community, I don't want to name it here, but there is a community who thinks that the soul gets sterilized in fire. They consider fire as God, and they think that the sterilization of a soul happens after which the soul becomes pure. Now, Krishna has specifically mentioned that the fire absolutely can do nothing to the soul. So then it is obvious that even the sterilization also is not possible. Yeah. What sterilization can happen is in terms of purification happen, which doesn't happen with a physical contact with any material element. It happens with the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Bhava samshuddhi is the word used in the 17th chapter, which means that purification is a action that happens on the soul or in the mind by constant chanting of the holy name of Krishna. तो ये जो thought process है, it is coming out of kind of not sufficient insufficient knowledge about the soul. एंड अभी आप अगर देखेंगे मीनिंग विच आई विल स्पीक मे बी एट द एंड ऑफ इट, तो आप देखेंगे कि इतना डिटेल्ड इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट द सोल, हैव यू read it anywhere, or have you even heard of that so and so book, so and so scripture mentions it? Have you even read it anywhere? What do you think? कहाँ पे पढ़ा है?
No.
एंड वो हो ही नहीं सकता, बिकॉज मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द communities, they don't accept the existence, and even if they do, they think that there is nothing beyond this, before this life and after this life. If at all there is this, then it is a judgment day. But Krishna says no, that's not the case. The soul moves from one body to another.
It is true, Prabhu. There have been evidences for that where people remember their past life.
Yeah.
And it has been recorded. They testified their home locations.
Correct.
They identified these were my parents. And one incident I remember, I saw on a YouTube. It is one child in Bombay. 3 4 years he was saying, I am, my father mother are somewhere else, this is not my place. So parents were thinking he is maybe not sure.
Hmm.
But one day he was insisting, so they took him. He went to Rajasthan.
Hmm.
So he even, while on the train, he said the platform will come this side. The parents said maybe this could be a fluke, right? Platform may come on this side.
Hmm.
And then when he came out of railway station, he said on the right side there is one Tangewala.
Ah.
So they inquired. So they said, yeah, there is a one old guy. Today he is not there. Anyway, they reached home. So actually, the old person opened the door. So he was saying, son. So they all were thinking, how can be possible, right?
Hmm.
But his elder son, after all lot of discussion, he said, we had a Pustani rifle. This either I know or my father used to know. Nobody else know where it is kept in the house.
Hmm.
So he said, yeah, I know. So he went upstairs and he said, this it is behind this wall. So they broke the wall. Behind that, they found that rifle. So then he shared his whole past. And people, these are the evidences. Like there are many. In fact, there is a doctor called Ian Stevenson. He did a research on this past life regression. He took birthmarks, body marks.
Correct.
So he did a study on 3,000 cases across the globe.
Prabhu, are you
And
referring to the details of the video that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's video that I had shared?
yeah, probably. Yeah, I
Uh,
saw that long back. Yeah, yeah. Chaitanya
yeah,
Chandra.
yeah. So I had sent across this video. Were you all able to go through it? Manju Mataji, Garima Mataji?
No,
No,
I
I
haven't gone through, but I know many more stories. So I myself has
So it's
experienced
not
similar,
about
so
the
I didn't
stories.
go.
No, it's not about the stories. That video wasn't sent across to hear the stories of reincarnation, but to understand the concept of karma. So
Okay.
please go through it because there are many points that will come to your mind which may not necessarily get covered in our discussions. And Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, he is an expert in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and he has structured that presentation very well, starting from whether rebirth exists or not, and how do you logically prove it. Of course, he has purposely not used any Bhagavad Gita shloka there, but just at a logic level that he has spoken. Please go through
Ji,
that
ji,
video.
ji, Prabhuji. Ji.
Can you
One
please
and a half.
share the link once more?
Okay, I had already shared in the group.
It's there in the group.
Okay,
It's there in the
okay,
group.
okay, sure. Okay.
So it's a 1.5 hour video, but once you start hearing it, you will not give up. बहुत ही fantastic video है. It's a masterpiece on karma, reincarnation, and various other points. Okay, so let's do this last verse for today. Avyaktoyam achintyoyam
Avyaktoyam achintoyam
avikaryoyam uchyate
avikaryoyam
Chyate
uchyate
tasmadevam viditvainam
tasmat
tasmat
evam
evam
vidit vainam.
vidityavainam
नानुशोचितुमर्हसि.
nanushoshritam arhasi.
Translation.
It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body.
So this verse is actually the last verse of that section where Krishna talks about the characteristics of the soul. Okay, which he ends with the tasmat evam vidit vainam nanushochitam arhasi na anushochitam arhasi. Meaning, do not grieve for something. Anushochitam is to feel sad about, lament, yeah, and na is to negate. No, don't do it. Okay, meaning you should know this very well that a soul under meaning does not undergo any change, and the characteristics of the soul are completely different from the characteristics of a body. So you should understand that you don't need to grieve for the body because the body is destructible. The body is going to change, undergo change, and at certain point of time the soul will leave the body, whether you fight the war and kill them or you don't fight the war. So this is a kind of a conclusion verse here. The main objective of this section, these set of verses starting from verse number 11 till verse number 25, is to remove Arjuna's grief and give him some kind of solace by via spiritual knowledge about the soul, the eternality of the soul. And because the soul is beyond any kind of ordinary perception, you cannot uh, understand it just by philosophical conclusions or experimentation. You have to understand soul on the basis of Vedic wisdom, Shastra, scriptures. You cannot understand by doing certain experiments. Okay. Now, avyakta is basically meaning it's not that it doesn't exist, it's just that it is not visible. So, there are three or four terms we need to understand. One is visible, and the opposite of that, which is invisible. One is manifest, and the opposite of that, which is unmanifest. Okay. So what visible and invisible means? Let's say, uh, let's take a bacteria. Is bacteria existing? Yes, it does exist. Is it visible? No, it is not visible. It is invisible. But does it mean it is kind of permanently invisible? No, you can take a microscope and you can see it. But something which is unmanifest, let's say a person, okay, let's say he develops a chemical. If you drink it, you will become invisible. So does it mean that he is invisible? Yes, he is invisible. But he is not, he is like, meaning he is unmanifest basically. He exists, but he doesn't come in front of you. So you cannot see him, even if you take the powerful microscope. So the soul is such that, it is kind of, unmanifest, and it is invisible also. You can't see with your naked eye, neither with any kind of powerful instruments also. And it is avyakta, meaning it exists, but it cannot come in front of you because it does not have any physical characteristics. How can you perceive it with your physical senses like eyes and ears and all that? And the final point in this verse is, there is the essence of this verse for Arjuna is, he should understand that matter is changeable, soul is changeless. And to, for Arjun, it highlights that the souls of Bhishma and Dronacharya will not be affected or destroyed in any manner. Neither can Arjun do it, even if he wants to. And their bodies will undergo change, will be destroyed, even if he doesn't fight the war. But uh, they will get a new body when the soul moves from this to another. So he should understand tasmad evam viditvaina. Arjun should understand that avyaktoyam, the invisibility, and achintyoyam, meaning inconceivability, unconceivability, meaning you cannot comprehend it, you cannot conceive, you cannot understand it. Huh? And avikarya, vikar is change, avikar is no change. Okay, immutability, changeless of the soul. He should understand that, and accordingly, do not lament. Nanu shochitum arhasi. The real person, that is the soul, is not affected by the changes. Hare Krishna. So we can close for the day here.
Hare
Any
Krishna.
questions around whatever we discussed today or discussed so far?
I have one small doubt.
Hmm.
So the last verse talks about that the soul is an entity which exists, but in whatever the condition is not visible. Okay.
Correct. Correct.
Unlike like human beings or any matter or amoeba, which is will be visible under the microscope or invisible in a specific condition, but existing and visible in some other condition. Okay.
Correct.
So, like sometimes when we talk about that, when maybe a positive soul, like not a soul, I should say some kind of a Paramatma or a God's conscious is there. Okay, we talk of that when some if it enters a house or something, we say that dogs or animals which have more better senses than human beings can sense that thing. Okay, even like we say, like there have been stories when not even stories, I have experienced that at home, like when somebody is about to pass out, okay, like they are about near the death,
Hmm.
that time it's the dogs at home will come to know much earlier, so maybe it's a negative energy or the positive energy. There is more sensing, they have more sense power. So is it that they experience soul or they don't experience the soul?
So, Garima Mataji, fantastic question. To be honest with you, I never thought on these lines. But what I can understand and what I can try to explain, I may not be 100% perfect here, so please excuse me for that. So, when the soul is in the body, let's take the example of an old man who is probably going to leave his body in next 5 minutes or half an hour, 1 hour,
Hmm.
and there is a dog in their house. Yeah?
Hmm.
So since the soul still does exist in the body, the person has not died yet.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that soul existed in the body for the previous 20, 20, 50, 70 years also, right? So why,
Yeah.
sorry, there is some sound coming. Okay, so why
Sorry,
did the
sorry.
dog, that's okay. So why did the dog not sense that soul for the previous 50, 70 years?
So
So
it's
that
not
means,
the. Yeah, sorry, you continue. I'm so
huh,
sorry.
so I was saying, so that means that the dog is perceiving something other than the soul, because the soul still exists in that same body. The person has not died yet. And
Yes,
if it is
true.
something other than the soul that it is perceiving, and as you are saying, it could be some energy and all that, it will definitely not be Paramatma. Yeah, because Paramatma's function is far different. As we go forward in Bhagavad Gita, we will learn, we will understand that. But Paramatma's function is far different than what
हम
is mentioned in this example.
हमारे यहाँ बोला जाता है ना कि यमदूत आते हैं लेने के लिए, राइट? इधर यम आएंगे या भगवान खुद आएंगे लेने के लिए. So it's not the soul that the dog is barking, but is it the that conscious of the yum or the conscious of the God that the dogs bark or they sense? Not just this, I mean there are many more examples, just not this, where dogs are able to सेंस कि हाँ अच्छा है, अब अच्छा होने वाला है, बुरा होने वाला है. चलो वो तो एनर्जी हो गया, मतलब वो ठीक है, वो अलग बात होगी, बट इस रिस्पेक्ट में तो मुझे लगता है कि क्या वो सोल नहीं सेंस कर पाते?
अच्छा, बढ़िया क्वेश्चन है. I may not be able to answer that completely. There is one incident once mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein there is a person called as Ajamil, who was very pious person till a certain point, and then he drifted and he became a notorious person. And at the end of his life, okay, for some reason, he had kept the name of his son as Narayan, and for some reason, he called him out Narayan when he was about to pass. And then at that time, Vishnu Duta as well as Yamaduta both come to take the soul back. So the Yamadutas were trying to take the soul, and Vishnu Dutas told him, "No, you cannot take him the soul, because he has chanted the name of Narayan at the end of his life. He doesn't deserve to go to Yamalok. Instead, he will go to Vaikuntha, although he was not a pious person for a good amount of his life." That's a completely different story. But the point I'm saying, when Yamadutas do come to take the soul away, so we can probably assume, I'm not 100% sure, the entry of Yamadutas can be perceived as or Vishnudutas, not just Yamadutas, the entry of Yamadutas or Vishnudutas can be perceived as some form of energy which probably the dogs or other animals can perceive, and maybe that acts as an indication for them to exhibit their behavior in a positive or a negative manner. This is speculation. I may not be perfect 100% here.
Okay, and I have one more question now. If from this only, if you have time,
Yeah, yeah.
how do we differentiate between a soul and a consciousness? Because we talk of three words here. One is conscious, one is soul, and one is energy.
Correct, correct. So, soul, the function of a soul is consciousness. So, you cannot differentiate consciousness and soul. The function of a body is karma or activity. So, you can't say that karma can be done without a body or body can remain without karma. So, soul's function, the proof of the fact that the consciousness is present in the body is the proof that the soul exists in the body, right? So when a person dies, he loses all the consciousness, and that is lost because the soul departs from the body. So that is the relationship between soul and consciousness. And third क्या बताया पूछा आपने? Sorry.
Energy.
Energy. Energy का पता नहीं. How do I explain this?
Okay.
But
Okay, and also for the first question between the soul and the consciousness, so this is nothing related to the body. So my question is not related to the body at all. So I'm
yes,
talking about the consciousness. So when we say like Krishna consciousness in your
correct,
in Gita's language, I've heard this from your mouth and from Sashwat also.
correct,
Krishna conscious, right? So
correct.
Krishna consciousness is same as Krishna's soul or not?
No, no, no. So
Okay.
what does Krishna consciousness meaning? Conscious about Krishna.
Okay.
Yeah. So which means let me explain that if you have just 2-3 minutes, okay?
I have all
So
the time.
so when you are in the office, you behave in a certain manner. When you are at home, you behave in a certain manner. When you are in with your friends or with your mummy daddy, your parents, you behave in a certain manner. What are you doing? How do you control your behavior in different environments? That is because you are aware of where you are, what is the environment, what is the right kind of behavior in which circumstance. So which means you are conscious about your surrounding. Correct? You are conscious that your incorrect action may bring disrepute to you, and your right action may give good reputation to you. Similarly, we as the body or as the soul or as a devotee of Krishna, we should be constantly conscious about Krishna, about Krishna's presence in our life, about Krishna's mercy that we constantly get, about Krishna's bhakti that we are supposed to do, about Krishna's holiness, about Krishna's activities, about Krishna's pastimes, about Krishna's form, anything and everything about Krishna. So when we are constantly conscious about Krishna, what will happen? We will
We'll
stop.
act like Krishna, we'll do like Krishna, we'll
uh,
be
we will
like
we
Krishna.
will act and do like devotees of Krishna, not Krishna.
Okay, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
here the
yeah,
ideology gets
yeah,
mixed up. I shouldn't go into that again.
yeah. Because see, we are not God. We are not God. And Krishna mentions that in various places
Yes,
in Bhagavad Gita. We are
G,
souls,
G.
we are part and parcel. We the part and parcel cannot become the whole. A hand cannot become a body, a leg cannot become a body. We are servants of Krishna. Jivera Swarupa hai Nitya Krishnera Dasa. We are eternal servants of Krishna. We cannot become Krishna. So, when we are conscious about Krishna, Krishna's presence, and various factors that I explained, it brings about a good behavior, a good thought process, a good devotion towards Krishna. Okay. Um, let's say a person is habituated to smoking and say drinking, okay, and giving bad words. Will he do the same when he is in the office with his boss? When his boss is sitting around, will he do? Probably not, right?
No, no, no. That I understood. The
Huh.
consciousness we
So
carry
this
and the
huh,
consciousness of the
correct.
Krishna. Okay, maybe I'll frame the question the other way around next time. So I
Okay.
got Krishna conscious means following Krishna's way is called Krishna
Instructions.
consciousness.
Instructions. Yeah. Okay. Hello.
Yes, Ji.
So
Okay.
thank you so much and see you next week.
Thanks a
Hare
lot.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.